Welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm your host, Justine Reichman. With me today is Dr. de Mello for part 2 of our series. This one's focusing on food and brain health. Welcome, Dr. de Mello.
It's nice to be here again with you.
Likewise. I'm super excited. I love chatting with you before, understanding how we can use food to feel better, be more aware, and tailor our diets accordingly so that by listening to how the food makes us feel, we can eliminate. So
Sounds
now,
fantastic, doesn't it?
It sounds really easy too.
It is easy. We make it difficult, though.
I think so.
Yeah.
So now we're talking about food and brain health. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to take a minute to let you introduce yourself for those that might have missed the first part of this series. So, Dr. de Mello, if you could, just give me your name, your title, and your specialty.
I'm Dr. Edison de Mello. I'm an MD, and I'm also a psychologist. And my specialty is integrative medicine. I'm the founder and the Chief Medical Officer of the Akasha Center for Integrative Medicine here in Santa Monica.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. I know that some of our folks listening and watching may be familiar with you, but for those that weren't, I just wanted them to get a sense of who we're talking to.
Yes, thank you.
And I know that we touched on your interest in GI because you do have a focus on there. You've done more research on it, and it's now really been very prevalent in your practice and as it relates to how people feel. Am I correct?
Yes, indeed. It is very prevalent, not only in my practice, but for the whole clinic. We have a whole clinic where GI issues and ways to help them with their gastrointestinal issues is actually a big focus for us.
So let's talk about the gastrointestinal issues and the mental health and how it affects it. Let's start by that study. You had mentioned a study to me where we talked about the impact of what we eat and how it affects our mental health.
Yes.
Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
So absolutely. First, I just want to let you know that this topic has been of great passion for me since graduate school, where I set out to show how the gut is connected to mental health. And that was during my doctorate studies, and I wrote a dissertation, PhD dissertation called Gut Feelings, Psychosocial Factors in Gastrointestinal Disease.
Great title.
Isn't it a great title?
Yeah, Gut
and
Feelings.
Back then, this was in 1996 when I finished, people were looking at this and going, what is it talking about? Today is part of an everyday discussion that most people have in an integrative medicine space or functional medicine. The study that you are alluding to, a study that showed that up to 20% of people with mental and emotional issues, that the study showed that a lot of those issues were connected to how they eat. And for those of us who have had children or have taught children, we know that when they have attention deficit disorder, attention deficit disorder is very prevalent. And when you remove those foods, the symptoms tend to get better. I'm not going to go as far as to say that they become completely cured of the attention deficit disorder, but it's clear that the symptoms really ameliorate quite significantly. And so the studies show that if 20% of people with mental health issues, they were able to link that 20% of them were able to get better or more, or have
20% of what population?
The population with mental health issues. That 20% of them were connected to how they felt, connected to what food they ate.
So interesting fact, or interesting note, I think I mentioned to you that I did a little stint at acupuncture school.
Yeah, you did.
It was in between one startup and another, but I was interested always to learn more because I was always interested in food and health and the connectedness or interconnectedness between East and West medicine, Eastern and Western medicine. But what was funny was I had a final project, and it was all about the impact of food on health. And so I created a website called The Good Mood Food.
The Good Mood Food.
The Good Mood Food. It doesn't exist anymore. But I had found that blueberries helped with depression and mushrooms helped with depression. And I'm not talking about the medicinal mushrooms. I'm talking about the mushrooms we buy in the grocery store. And I thought it was super interesting that these foods, and this was me I did some scientific research. I was in school, so I'm not a doctor, and I did not do a study. But it was interesting information to have at hand, and I think the interest, if I was still there, would pique me to find out if there were any studies done on it.
Yes.
To see what did they find out from this. Was this isolated instances? And so my question to you is, what is your knowledge based on this? Is this something you're familiar with?
Yes, quite familiar actually. In fact, we have a program that we designed several years ago called the Reset Program, how to reboot your system for whatever condition you may be facing at the time that you're coming to see us. That diet and rebooting your system becomes vital to the success of the treatment, along with everything else that we want the patient to consider doing, which may include medication. But diet is essential. And we know that inflammation is what links every condition. You sneeze because you're inflamed. You get cancer because you're inflamed. It's multifactorial conditions or factors that lead to the disease. But inflammation is the common denominator. So when you eat foods that help you decrease inflammation, such as the blueberries of the world, all the berries, or mushrooms that you talked about, or foods that have been proven effective. Garlic has a substance in it called alicillin that is antimicrobial. So when you understand the power of these foods, and you go back to ancient medicine, when modern medicine was not available, how do they treat these conditions? Through herbs.
Herbs, right? Herbs
Exactly.
and foods and all sorts of things.
And you can go as far as saying that most, if not all, but let's say most medications came from botany.
Yes.
Right? They look at a plant from the Amazon. They find a substance that can be helpful, right? And they look at that, they studied it, and then suddenly they do the double-blind study showing that there's benefit, and hold and behold, before you know it, the drug's in the market, right? After several stages of testing the drugs. So without botany, we wouldn't be here. Without botany, I think, our world would be very different. Aspirin comes from botany. Right?
I mean, a lot of things.
William Bark, yeah.
And it's interesting because when people learn about supplements, they're like, they're just herbs, they're safe. But I think it's more than that. I think we have to know what we're taking, what they are. They can be as serious and as helpful as something else in maybe a lower dosage, and they can have contraindications that can be problematic. So understanding that the medicine that we take comes from botany, and then realizing that those herbs also come from botany, is kind of an aha moment, I think, for people, because I don't know that they realize. I don't know that the majority of people realize that.
No, and listen, herbs and supplements are the cornerstone of my practice, are the foundation of what we do, because we try to help people get to their health that they dream of through natural ways whenever possible. And then when it's not possible, we will utilize technology, usually Western medicine, to help us get to that point. But the truth is that you don't need to choose a supplement like a shot in the dark anymore. For those people who have the means to afford doing a nutritional assessment, where we take your blood, and through your blood we're going to see the levels of vitamins that are present in your blood, that will be the best way to look and say, oh, here you are deficient in zinc, you're deficient in vitamin C.
So with that being said, we have our lovely little lady here.
This is Kiana. Kiana is one of our incredible medical assistants.
So, the reason I think we discussed having Kiana participate and to do this IV, as much as my palms are sweating and I am the biggest baby, and I'm sure that a lot of viewers out there and listeners also don't like needles, but it's important, right? Why is it important to have this in addition to changing our diets?
So I tell you why it's important. Because when you take a vitamin or an herb, it needs to go through your gastrointestinal system. And the gastrointestinal system is the seat of your health, right? It's clear that it's the seat of the health, the seat of your soul for some of us. But its job, among many other functions, is to protect you. So absorbing some of those things in your gastrointestinal system takes a lot of steps. When you do an IV, it goes directly into your cells, directly in your system, and it bypasses the gut. So therefore, the acid base that most of us have to, in the medical world, has to balance and control. We take the kind of the variable out, and 100% what we give you goes straight where it needs to go, which is in your into your cells. So, vitamin C, which
So what are we doing here today?
so you're doing two things. First of all, you're doing phosphatidylcholine.
Okay, that's connected directly to my brain health.
It is.
And we had talked about the challenge I have with word finding and short-term memory as a result of the time I took Topamax for my migraines.
Yes.
So what can I expect for this? I mean, obviously not just in one treatment, but as a support to my endeavor to maybe recover some word finding issues or my short-term memory.
Great question. So your brain needs food, and it needs food usually in the form of amino acids and fats called phospholipid, right? And so phosphatidylcholine is a precursor to this incredible neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is the element in your brain that allows you to think sharply, for your cells to fire, your neurons to fire.
Okay, I'm excited. I mean, I'm not excited about the needle. I'm excited about this. So let's continue this conversation while I give Corinne my arm.
You give Kiana your arm. She's going to take good care of you.
I'm going to give Kiana my arm, and I'm not going to cry, but...
Extend your arm for me.
Do you want me to hold your hand?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
They're a little clammy. So now tell me a little bit about what we're getting here and what I can expect.
So you're getting phosphatidylcholine, right? Which is the precursor to acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter, phospholipid that allows your brain to function better. So you did it.
Thank you. Yes.
Yay.
Okay, you did it.
Yay,
Woo!
fantastic.
Okay, so now what? Yeah, I feel fine. Thank you. Oh, and I get a pretty pink thing.
I'm going to bandage you up, but keep talking.
So tell me, okay, so what am I going to feel like? What are the benefits? What can I
So
expect short term and long term?
So you said it before that it's not like one shot, will fix all the memory issues that you may have, but it's a beginning. Phosphatidylcholine being food for your brain. After a while, I'd say after 3 to 4 treatments, you start to feel that your memory is getting better. But alone, it will have a benefit. It's going to have even better benefits if you're also looking at your diet.
Right.
Right? If you're doing phosphatidylcholine and you're eating inflammatory foods or foods that lead to inflammation, such as the big culprit out there with sugar,
Right, yes.
this will be useless. So it's no different than somebody going to the gym, working out, and coming home and eating,
Right.
a lot of fat that
Right.
are unsaturated fat, or drinking, out of control because you are adding calories into a system that you're trying to remove calories from.
Right.
So this alone will not do what it's designed to do at 100%. So I recommend that people do what I say, brain exercises. Do you do puzzles? Do you have something that you use in your downtime to really exercise your brain? Do you play a game, right? A word game. Puzzles are very good. What do you do to stimulate your brain? And the other thing I think to remember, especially because we are talking about fear, is to look at fear not as an enemy, but rather as something that is here to allow you to get from point A to point B.
I try to look at it as temporary.
Yeah, it is temporary.
So
right?
my mom likes to say, it's over before you know it.
Yes.
Like, the next time you're thinking about it, it's over. And so the needle part is out, right?
Yeah.
And that was what scares me, is the pinch. And that was a lot better than the other needle I had in my head today. I've had a lot of needles today.
Yeah.
But in any case, so let's go back to the food and the brain.
Yes.
Okay, so if somebody was to ask you, they were having memory issues, whether it's a disease like Alzheimer's or something, are there any? And I don't know if it's. I'm not looking for just a. There may be a no to this. I'm not. I don't have any preconceived ideas. So if you have Alzheimer's or dementia, is there a way to slow down or help people that are having those kinds of memory issues?
Yeah, there is a way to slow it down. It's genetically induced. I think we have to be realistic that once you have a genetically induced condition, it's there to stay, but you can remove or you can decrease the effects of it in your health, in your life. And it always starts with your belief system. And again, this is the therapist in me speaking now, Justine, sorry. If you ask me, this is my protein drink that I'm about to have in a little bit. If you ask me, if this was a medication, you ask me, Dr. De Mello, is this medication going to help your headache or my headache? The first thing that I would ask you is, do you believe it's gonna help you? We always think of placebo as a negative thing.
Right.
But there's also placebo that is positive, that allows us to believe what is in front of us and to move with it. So I think the first thing that people need to understand is that you are what you eat, you become what you think. Right?
Yeah.
And so what are your thoughts about the condition that you're facing? Are you angry at it? Are you kicking and screaming? Are you going, okay, I've got this. I'm going to have it, but it's not going to have me. And then you do the things that we've been talking about in the second segment, which is watch what you're eating. Watch if you are exercising. Watch if you're drinking enough water. What are the stresses in your life? What is your vitamin levels? What does your poop look like? Right? Because, if you have a car that is very expensive, leather seats, great body, but the carburetor is not working, the whole package doesn't mean much. The carburetor is off. You have a carburetor in your system, which is your gut. Everything starts in your gut. Again, good old Hippocrates, health starts in your gut. He also said that 500 years ago. And others that followed. So the idea is to step back and say, how can I optimize all the other elements in my life, all the other factors, my exercise, which is good for my mind, my immune system, how am I boosting it up? What vitamins am I taking? Do I know what I'm deficient of? And then doing things like using phosphatidylcholine, if your doctor, your primary care provider agrees with that, if you trust her to make the decision with you, then I think it's really good to combine, the incredible technological advance of Western medicine with the wisdom and ancient knowledge of Eastern approaches.
So I have two last questions for this segment.
Okay.
And one of them is, what would you share with somebody that was having depression? Is there some sort of, within, obviously everything's tailored, but is there some sort of foods you might recommend avoiding?
Yes.
Can you mention that, and maybe share a story if you have one about somebody that that you had depression and benefited from this?
Yeah. Again, let's go back to the brain-gut axis. There's a highway of information going back and forth, right? The gut informs the brain when it's satiated, when it needs something. The brain tells the gut when it's hungry. The same is true with depression or any kind of mental imbalance. We all have heard at one time or another something called serotonin, also known as the happy hormone. And 95% of serotonin is metabolized and produced in your gut, not in your brain. When you think about it, 95%, it's a huge amount. So when somebody comes to me and say, I've been feeling depressed. I don't know what's going on. We are going to talk about life events first. Certainly, if you lost a loved one, if you're going through a breakup, if you lost a job, it's cause and effect. It's right there. So eliminating those and coming back to you, then we need to say, what do you eat? How much water do you drink? What's your go-to food? What's your comfort food? Because we know that those foods will lead to inflammation. And if there's inflammation, there's decrease in serotonin.
And more depression.
And more depression. So I had a patient who had been on Prozac for about 20 years. And she came in to see me. This is about 5 years ago. Really brilliant woman, head of a big company that she was working for. And she suddenly said, I've been on Prozac and feeling really well balanced for the last 20 years. In the last 6 months, it's not working. And I would like for you to switch me to another antidepressant. And I said, well, we may do that later on, but let's look under the hood.
Right.
And that's the question. If you've been doing this medication for 20 years and suddenly it's not working anymore, why it's not working and why now? Long story short, she had gone through a divorce, and before, when she was married, she was a vegetarian.
Oh, interesting.
And then after they divorced, she was living by herself. Her ex-husband was the cook in the family, was actually a chef by training. So she didn't have to worry about food, and he was very much into healthy food, mostly pescatarian, vegetarian. Suddenly she's by herself, not with a partner anymore. She's the head of this big company. She's eating late, and when she's eating on the fly. She's not really thinking about what her body needs. So was making the decisions about what to eat when she was hungry.
Wow, that's really life-changing for her, I'm sure.
And so once we took a step back and we say, all right, why don't we try this for 21 days? Just 21 days. Let's clean this up a little bit. We're not going to cook, but let's look for a food delivery service. They can deliver food to you at home and at your office. She got better.
That's amazing. I really appreciate you sharing that story, because I think it's really something that people can latch onto, and it makes it doable.
It is doable.
It's doable.
It's not the answer to everybody. Of course, I want to just disclose that everybody's different.
Right.
And you should never stop a medication or make any changes without consultation with a person that you trust in your corner, your medical person. But the food that you eat affects everything, including your mental health.
Mucho obrigado por todo su apoyo y atenção.
Wow, impressive.
Okay.
I like your Portuguese.
You like my Portuguese? Thank you so much for joining me on this second segment, Dr. de Mello. I'm tasting vitamins, by the way. We'll talk about that in segment 3.
Okay.
So stay tuned for segment 3.
Okay.
But thanks again for joining me.
It's a pleasure.